Hello, my dear students, and the rest of the learners. Welcome to part 9 of a 29-part series of tutorials in Fundamentals of Structured Programming using C. In this tutorial, we are going to learn our second selection control structure by the name if-else. My name is Mehmet A.M., or you can simply call me Emily Swap. What is an if-else selection control structure? An if-else selection control structure is a control flow that is used in a situation whereby there are two available options to be taken, one when the condition is met, and the other when the condition is not met. So this control structure gives us an additional action to take. Remember, in part 8 of our series, which is accessible from Emily Swap ICT YouTube channel, where we learned about the if selection control structure, we saw that an action is only taken if the condition is true. So it's only a single action, or an action is taken only if the condition is true. But when we speak about the if-else selection control structure, we are simply referring to a control structure that has an action to be taken when the condition evaluates to true, as well as another action to be taken when the condition is false. Therefore, an action will always be taken regardless of the condition that evaluates to true or to false, because the construct has the if part and the else part. So the syntax for if-else control structure is as follows. If the condition is true, take an action. Otherwise, if the condition is not true, perform another action at the end. So there's always an action to be taken when the condition is true or when the condition is false. So an action is taken under the section 4, the condition being true, and if the condition is not true, a second or another action is taken under the else part. So it simply means that the first action or the second action is always taken, but never both actions. So if the first action is executed, the second action is skipped. If the first action is not acted on or nothing is done under the first action, then the second action is taken. The conditional operator that we call ternary operator that we write as follows, where you have the question mark and full colon, but is treated as a single operator, can be used instead of the if-else statement. It takes three operands which form a conditional expression, and the first operand is a condition. The second operand is for the action to be taken when the condition evaluates to true, and the third operand is for the action to be taken if the condition evaluates to false. So it's written as follows. So you have the condition, you have a condition, then the question mark symbol. Then the first action that should be taken, that is like the if section. So the first action is to be taken when the condition evaluates to true, while the second action is taken when evaluates to false, or when the condition evaluates to false. So we write it as condition. That's a condition which is supposed to be checked. If the condition evaluates to true, first action is taken. If it evaluates to false, second action is taken. So this is a simplified version of the if-else control structure. For example, you can write it as follows. The condition is radius more than 5. So is radius, or is the value of radius more than 5? Now, if yes, display this statement. The circle is big. Otherwise, if radius or the value of radius is not more than 5, then display the message, this circle is small. So my dear students and the rest of the learners, this is just a sample to show you how the ternary operator works. It is a simplified version. And with this one, we avoid the if-else structures. This statement contains a conditional expression that evaluates the string literal. This circle is big if the condition grade is more than 5, or if the condition grade is more than 5. Now, this is an error. It's not condition grade is more than 5, but radius is more than 5. So let me correct that. Remember, you can always make your correction. So our value or the memory location or the variable is supposed to be radius and not grade. Remember, if you are writing a program, you declare a variable, for example, called radius, but when you come to checking the condition, you check using a different variable name, there will be an error. So you have to rectify, as I have done. So this statement contains a conditional expression that evaluates the string literal. This circle is big if the condition radius is greater than 5 is true. And evaluates the string literal. This circle is small if the condition is false. So the following is an example of a pseudocode, a flowchart source code for a program implementing the if-else control structure to compute the area of a circle if the radius is greater than 5, or compute the perimeter if the radius is less than 5, and display the results on the screen. So my dear students and the rest of the learners, the if-else control structure gives you an opportunity to ensure that at least an action is taken. So the user is not left pending. An action is taken if the condition is true, while another action is taken if the condition is false. So there is no time when the processor will fail to perform a certain action. So the pseudocode for this program is as follows. Start, then set pi to 3.143, then prompt the user to enter the radius of a circle, read the radius, then check. If the value in memory location called radius is more than 5, compute area as pi times radius, and display it on the screen. Otherwise, that is else. That means if the value of radius is not more than 5, then compute the perimeter as, or using the formula 2 times pi times radius, and display it on the screen. And then end the program. So my dear students and the rest of the learners, simply this program will always perform a certain action. So if the value of radius is more than 5, then the program will compute the area of a circle. But if the value of radius, or the value in the memory location called radius, is not more than 5, then the program will compute, or the processor will compute the perimeter of the circle and display it on the screen, and then you end. So that is pseudocode. That's how you write pseudocode. A sample pseudocode for a program that implements the if-else control structure. The flowchart for it will look as follows. The title is computing either area or perimeter based on radius size. Remember, never forget to include the title of your flowchart. And then you have our flowchart here. You can see you have begin, and then you set memory location aside and initialize it with 3.143. Then prompt the user for radius. Then the condition is radius more than 5? If not, that is the first section. If not, that means if the value of radius is not more than 5, if the value of radius is not more than 5, then take the first part and compute the perimeter of the circle using the formula 2 times pi times radius and assign the value in memory location called radius. And then display the value in the memory location or the value or the results that have been kept in the memory location called perimeter. And end the program. Otherwise, if that is called alternative, if the value of radius is more than 5, then that means it is true. Compute the area of the circle by multiplying the content of the memory location called radius to itself, multiplied by the value in the memory location called pi, and the results assigned in memory location called area. And then display area. So my dear students and the rest of the learners can see that at any time, an action will be taken. If the value in memory location called radius is more than 5, then the area will be computed and being displayed. Otherwise, if the value of radius is less than 5 or equals to 5, then what will happen is the processor will compute the perimeter of the circle and display it on the screen and end. So there is no time when the perimeter and the area will be computed. At no time will both of them be computed. Why? One of the actions is the one which will be taken. So let's now write a program. Let's write a program in C that is implementing the if-else selection control structure so that we see how it will behave. So our program will compute either area or a perimeter of the circle based on the radius entered. So we begin with a comment. Our comment is compute the area and the perimeter based on the size of the radius entered. So that's the comment. And then we include the proper directive string.h. Then our main function. Under the main function, we set memory location assigned to hold a value which will not be changing, which is as a decimal point, and that value is 3.142. From there, we declare memory locations, 3 of them, or variables, one called radius, the other one called area, and the other one called perimeter, and the 3 of them are expected to hold values with fractional paths. Then we are telling the processor to display the message on the screen, enter radius of a circle, then read the value that the user will enter and assign it in memory location called radius. And that value can have a decimal point, it can have a fractional part. Once that is done, pick the value in memory location called radius, check if that value is more than 5. If it is more than 5, enter into that block and multiply the value in memory location called radius by itself, then multiply the results to or with the content of memory location called pi and assign those results into the memory location called area. Then from there, display the message on the screen. The area for this circle is pick the content in memory location called area, ensure it does not exceed 6 characters, with 2 of them being reserved for the fractional part. Otherwise, that is else, that means if the value of radius is not more than 5, then do this part. Pick the content of the memory location called radius, multiply that value to the value or with the value in the memory location called pi. The results you are going to get, multiply by 2, and then assign the results in memory location called perimeter. Then the next statement tells the processor, display the following message on the screen. The perimeter for this circle is, then pick the content in memory location called perimeter and display that value at this point where you have the type identifier for the data type double. And display that value on the screen, formatting to maximum of 5 numbers, with 2 being reserved for the fractional part on decimal points. And therefore, if, for example, the area, that the perimeter of the circle is, for example, that 8.22, then the statement will read as follows. The perimeter for this circle is that 8.22, and then the cursor will blink on the next line, and that will be the end of that program, because the control will be taken by the operating system, and the program ends. So let's code this program using C IDE, that is Falcon IDE, and then you can see whether this program will behave as I've explained. So as usual, we are going to launch our Falcon IDE. Always remember you have to wait for it to load. Then click on File, point on New, and click on Project. Under the new project, click on Empty Project and click Next. Then under Empty Project 1, erase what is there and give it a name. So I will call it if else structure. If else structure. Remember, the names you give to your files or to your projects should be meaningful. And then our program is of type C, or is for C programming language. So our compiler will be C type compiler. And then you click on Finish. Then, so we have our project here. The project is if else structure. So let's create a file for it. Point on that, then point on New, then click on C file. Then rename this default name to the one we are using. So the name of our program or our file should be if else. And just call it if else, and then click anywhere within that section. And you can see our name of our program or our file is if else.c. From there, you type your program here in the editor section. And once you type your program, you save it and compile. So remember, you can always get your program from our word processor if you have written it there or type it directly here. So let's have our program here. This is the program that I have already explained to you. We have discussed each of its parts. So this part is for the comment. This is pre-processor directive. This is the main function, which contains the body for our program. Then this is a declaration of the constant memory location. Then we declare our variables or our memory locations here. We prompt the user to enter the value of radius. The user enters a value and it is read. Then we request the compiler or the processor to check if the value in the memory location called radius is more than 5. If that is true, compute the area using this formula, then display the results on the screen. Otherwise, if the value of radius is not more than 5, compute the perimeter using this formula and display that perimeter on the screen in the format as per this statement. And then once that is done, return the control statement back to the operating system and our program. So this is our if-else control structure program. Once you are done with the coding, you save it and click on Save All. And then save the name of that project. So it's always advisable you retain the same name. So you just click on Save, but remember you have to select where your program is to be stored. Then let's compile our program to see if it has any errors. Our program has no errors, and that's why you can see at the bottom here, it reads compilation success in 0.453 seconds. We can then run our program because it has been converted to object code when you have compiled. So to run it or execute it, you click on run, then click select run or select execute. So then we click on run. As you can see, we are now being prompted to enter the radius of our circle. Now, whichever value we enter, whether it is more than 5 or less than 5, we are going to get results. So let's see if we enter a value which is less than 5, for example, 4, what do we expect the program to compute? This value is less than 5. So the section for if radius is more than 5 will not be met. So that section will not be computed. So we expect our program to compute the perimeter of the circle. So let's press enter. You can see the program has been able, or the process has been able to compute the perimeter of the circle, and it has displayed it on the screen as follows. The perimeter for this circle is 25.4.14. Let's press enter, and then we run our program again, and this time around, use a different value for radius. So we can enter, for example, now a value which is more than 5, for example, 12. So that value is more than 5. So we expect that the section which will be computed is for the area. And we are going to have area displayed on the screen. So let me press enter. You can see the section for the else part is one which has been executed. Therefore, the statement reads the area for this circle is, so you can see, I repeat, you can see because the value of radius is more than 5. So the section of the program which will be executed is the one which is for the radius being more than 5, not the else part. This time it is the first section because 12 is more than 5. So the program, you can see, has been able to compute the area and displayed it on the screen using the statement. The area for this circle is 452.45. So you can see in both situations, an action will be done. If the section 1, if the condition is not met, the second part is executed. If the condition is met, the first part is, or the first part of the condition is executed. But there's no time when nothing will not be done, or when nothing will not be done. So something will always be done, whether the condition has been met or if the condition has not been met. And my dear students and the rest of the learners, that's how the if-else control structure works. We can now save all and close all and exit from our program or our IDE. And with that, my dear students and the rest of the learners, we have come to the end of part 9 of the series. You can now continue and listen or watch part 10 of the series, in which you are going to learn about what we call the nested if selection control structure. Congratulations, therefore, for learning part 9 of 29 on if-else selection control structure in Fundamentals of Structured Programming using C. You can access the rest of the parts in the series, as well as other computer or ICT videos, by clicking or tapping on Emily Swap ICT YouTube channel below this video. To subscribe to the channel, tap on subscribe button below this video in YouTube if it's not currently reading as subscribed. For any further correspondence, kindly write to us through the email emilyswap@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening to me, and let's meet in part 10 of the series. God bless.